Welcome back. The book is called In Search of Fatherhood, A Mother Load of Wisdom from the World of Daughterhood. Joining us right now, the author, Renner. Thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And so you have a fascinating story. You're actually based out of Portland. You're from Portland.
Yes.
But I know this book has been making the rounds nationwide.
Yes.
What was going on in your life? I know you had a high-stress job a couple of years ago that you decided you needed to do this and you needed to go out and interview 50 women who are daughters about their fathers.
Yes. Yeah, well, so I was in a corporate career that had just followed this trajectory onward and upward for 20 years, and I was kind of like the frog in the pot of boiling water, and I got to the point where it just all melted down and I couldn't do it any longer. And at the time, my daughters were 9 and 13, and I had this really interesting revelation, and Jake, you can probably relate to this, that when we grow up, we're trained in 101 different things. How to play baseball, how to fix things, swimming lessons. How much training did you get in how to raise a daughter?
Zero, and I have still, I'm raising a son and I have no idea still. So,
And it struck me that here I was raising 2 daughters, and I've been trained in all these different things and instructed and so forth, and I didn't really have a clue. And I thought, where do I go for that expertise? And I decided I'm going to go talk with daughters, but daughters who are old enough to be able to reflect on their fathers and what they took from them. So the women range across 7 decades and across 20 different countries.
Wow. Very different types of women. Like you even had a transgender woman in there.
Yes.
Who was a boy growing up, but then became a woman, and you thought that was also important to have a variety of types of people.
Yes. Yeah, I was looking for the most universal understanding of fatherhood from a daughter's perspective that I could possibly find.
When you said you were talking with daughters, what was the youngest age that you connected with?
27.
Okay.
And the oldest was in her early 90s.
Interesting. Wow, that's quite a span.
Yeah.
And what kinds of lessons did you take away from some of these women?
Yeah, well, a lot of what I call, kind of the detail lessons, but there was a single big lesson that I took from it that was really enriching for me, and that is that across generations and across cultures, regardless of where you are in the world, there's this universal love story between fathers and daughters.
Sure.
And it all starts out the same, but it ends quite differently.
Right.
And so I bucket these stories into 3 different categories. And the first are the wonderful stories that I call the long straw. It's about the daughters who draw the long straw in their fathers. Fathers who are attentive, affectionate, and can provide discipline and direction in a very healthy way. And there's a story, for example, of a woman named Wendy whose single father raised her, and she loved him so much that she proposed to him when she was 4.
Oh, my goodness.
And of course, there's the other end of the continuum where daughters are growing up in relationships with their fathers that are abusive.
Right.
And there were a number of women who shared those stories with me, including a woman named Courtney, who, as a 12-year-old girl, pulled her father's German Luger on him.
Gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
7th grade.
Wow.
In the middle, there's this category that so those are called the short straw. So there's a long straw, the short straw, and then in the middle there are these more complex stories that I call the long and the short of it. And these are stories of the fathers who are ambivalent, or who neglect their daughters, or who are there physically but not there emotionally, or they may die young.
Right.
For example, I spent time with Kara Goucher, the Olympic runner, who lost her father to a drunk driver who killed him just before she turned 4.
Wow.
So anyway, those are 3 different archetypes, if you will, and they set the daughter's life on a very different trajectory that goes upward, downward, or kind of sideways.
I bet.
So let's say you find yourself, you say you're 50, in your 50s, and you've got grown daughters now. Did you find that, is there a too late to start reconnecting with your daughter if you find yourself in that middle category?
No. Obviously, the earlier you can start, the better. But the last story in the book is maybe the richest, and it's a story that I call The Resurrection. And it's about a woman who grew up abused by her father, and how they reestablished an adult relationship. Not just an adult relationship, but a healthy, loving adult relationship when she was in her 50s and he was in his late 70s. It's just a remarkable story of authentic forgiveness that just stood me on my head as I listened to it.
Wow.
Well, I've got a question for you, too. Jenny and I were talking about this. We both have 2 girls in the family. Did you ever see a dynamic that one daughter felt that she had a really close relationship with her dad, and the other daughter didn't necessarily, or the relationship was different? So a short stick and a long stick?
Well, I didn't interview siblings from the same family,
Okay.
but I did hear something several times that was interesting. In families where there were several daughters, I had a couple of these women tell me, you know, when we went to my father's funeral, or shortly after the funeral, my sisters and I were talking about him,
Right.
and I had to share that I felt really bad because I was my dad's favorite daughter. And then the other sister said, well, no, wait a minute, I was the favorite daughter. And then the third one would chime in and say, no, 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 wait, I was. So those were interesting stories of how the
Yes.
father really made each one of them feel very special.
Right, even though their relationships might have been different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm noticing that in my own children, the relationships are very different based on who the kids are. So
Sure.
Yeah.
they have different needs.
Well, it's a great read, and I was flipping through it last night. I mean, just some amazing stories in there and something that dads can take away for sure. So if people want more information about your book, they can go to kevin-renner.com and find out how to get it and see some video on there as well and
Yes.
pictures of your own daughters. We love your shirt,
Yeah. Oh,
by
thank
the way.
you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Oh, look at that.
Very
Beautiful.
proud of my two daughters. I love them dearly.
And I'm sure they're proud of you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin Renner.
You're welcome.
We'll be right back.